A 2-1 loss to Real Madrid in El Clásico is a bummer. There's other profane words that I could definitely use. I was frustrated watching the game. It was sad to see. And if anything, as much as I tried to just feel like it was one result and move on from it, El Clásico was always a referendum of where Real Madrid are, where Barcelona are in the hierarchy, in the order. There was only one game separating these two teams in the win-loss column all time. Now Real Madrid have a +2 in that category, and that doesn't sit well with me. So we're all frustrated, I understand that, and I also am recording a podcast later today, so I'm going to try to be a bit more abbreviated with these 5 headlines from Barcelona's 2-1 loss to Real Madrid in El Clásico. 1. Barça is worse than Real Madrid. Before this match, I had tweeted out that I hoped that Barça would play like underdogs, because I get this sense, and it does frustrate me too. I think the worst feeling of all, losing to Real Madrid is one thing, but the worst feeling of all is going into this match feeling like if Barcelona is not the better team, and if in El Clásico Barcelona are not the overwhelming better team, then they can't get a result in El Clásico. And that's what stinks to me, that Barca can't be underdogs. They can't find that extra fight. They can't find that grit, that desire. They can't find luck. And if you don't have luck, like Messi used to make luck for Barcelona, then you're not going to get results. I just hate that once that first goal went in on the counter, it felt like the result was already decided. I can live with mistakes from young players. Dest with the big miss, but generally over the game, he was in the right positions, and it showed bright, and we'll talk about him a little bit later. Eric Garcia, I thought was solid. He had a good game, but he was culpable and made 2 crucial mistakes on the goals, where he didn't track Alaba properly, and then he also let Vasquez get goal side of him. So Eric Garcia, as good as he was, he makes 2 youthful mistakes, and that leads to 2 Real Madrid goals. And even some of the more promising youngsters in Gabi and Ansu Fati, they were fine today, but nothing truly special against Real Madrid. But then again, we talk about the youngsters making mistakes that I can live with, but Jordi Alba comes off a game against Dinamo Kiev where he was the man of the match, and I think he was dealing with an injury, but even injury or not, he was good enough to start, and he was nowhere to be found today. The conclusion you get is that this is a team full of young players who are learning, and that means you're going to have a team that is disjointed, that is disorganized, that is going to make some individual mistakes that are going to make you just smack your head and say, why can't we get to where we know Barca can go? Why can't these players fulfill their promise already? The issue is that some of these veterans are having those same errors. And that is the question. That being the veteran part of the disjointed, the disorganized team that Barca is the question that I'd like to ask the manager. 2. No overreaction. Even though I just said all those things and it feels like it's a big referendum on Barca, I'm not going to react to a 1-goal loss to Real Madrid in El Clásico at this point in the season. Barcelona, it should be reminded, lost Messi, they lost Griezmann just before the season began, and with no money to truly reinforce, because you want to call Luke de Jong a reinforcement, I'm not going to, so with no proper reinforcements, it's difficult to say that Barcelona should have been where Real Madrid is in their rebuilding journey. The space and mistakes that were made on that counterattack goal, the first one, or even the second one too, but on the first one, Memphis losing the ball, Tim Gaetha missing the tackle, and Garcia not tracking Alaba, that first goal was a team mistake. In theory, those things are fixable, but right now, this team isn't there. And I'm not telling you to accept that at all, but it does remind us of Barca's expectations. Did you really think that they were going to beat Real Madrid in this version of El Clásico when they struggled for the last 2 seasons? I sure hope they did. But where do we think Barca is right now? At the moment, the expectations are that Barca can finish top 4 in the Liga, and the expectation is that they can make the Champions League knockout, which is an uphill battle, but by taking care of business against Dinamo Kiev and by beating Valencia, they put themselves in a better spot to do those things that are actually on the menu, not beating Real Madrid. Those are the things, that being Valencia and Dinamo Kiev, that will define this season. And for those quickly about the Europa League thing, I want to remind you that getting to the Champions League knockout is worth a lot more money than even winning the Europa League, which is unlikely that Barca would do. So making the Champions League knockout is very important. And again, top 4 in the Liga and making that Champions League, when we're talking about money, we're talking about reinforcements, and we're talking about this rebuilding process, those are the expectations that I have, because those are the ones that actually have an eye on the future, not some one-off game against some stupid team in white. 3, missing a right winger. We'll talk more about tactics on the podcast, but I'm not going to galaxy brain it here. Barcelona desperately needed a right winger, and Dest's big miss in this game that we'll all look back to, and people get frustrated at Dest and say he's a terrible player, whatever. But that was a right winger finishing as a right back. And that is unfortunately what Dest is. I actually think he got better in this game for the last 10 or 15 minutes when he went back to right back, even though he's been better at right winger recently, but that's what you get with a mercurial 20-year-old player. And in that last 10 minutes, it was good that he finally was able to take Ferland Mendy off the dribble 1v1, and he delivered an assist to Aguero. So I'm going to take the positives and totally understand the negatives and the frustration towards Dest. And in that second half, when Barca switched to the 4-2-3-1, it was Gabi pushed high on that right side with Dest overlapping, and Gabi was more there to support Dest and defend for Coutinho than deliver a final ball, which is totally fine. Gabi played his role well in this game, and even though it felt like he was quiet, that was by design. Mendy and Cruz did very little in this game, and that's a credit to the 17-year-old. But they kept showing on the bench Araujo, Pedri, and Dembele. And while every team has injuries, this team is not reinforced with top-level talent enough to have three of your, I would say, should-be starters missing. Dembele, obviously the big one, and we have a lot to discuss about his contract for the next weeks and months ahead. I would hope that it gets figured out, but Barcelona needing a right winger is a problem that unfortunately may not be resolved this season. 4. I complained to high heaven this week about Coutinho against Valencia and Dinamo Kiev and how he just does not fit on the field, but I actually can't complain and blame Koeman too much about the switch he made at halftime, taking off Mengueza and changing the formation by putting Coutinho on as the number 10. I actually think because Real Madrid were Swiss cheese up through the middle, Modric looks old, Cruz looks old, and Casemiro looked not great either in this game. So that meant that Real Madrid were leaving some spaces in the middle of the field, and I thought Coutinho actually did a good job exploiting those in the second half. I've been very critical of Koeman for not being able to make the first adjustment and always being outmanaged when it's time to make that next jab, and I felt like at halftime, Koeman did respond well with the decision that needed to be made. And I can't entirely blame Coutinho either for what Barca did in the attack. The problems that they were blighted by today are the same ones that they've dealt with all season long. Messi is gone, so Barcelona didn't have someone to finish the ball, and they didn't have someone to deliver a final ball. And that, again, is a problem that's not going to be solved overnight. It was good to see Aguero get his first Barca goal, and it's a bit unfair to scapegoat Luke de Jong, but I think I will. Madrid's second goal comes because Piqué was pushed forward along with Luke, who had just lost the ball to disorganize Barca's attack anyway. So I'd rather have put on Lenglet and committed to Piqué forward and left de Jong on the bench. And that again leads to a bigger problem about Barca's squad. You can call for Ricky Puig in this game, totally fair. You can call for Yusuf Demir in this game, Nico Gonzalez, for those young players, Alejandro Balde, that might have made more of an impact than some of the veterans like Sergio Roberto, like Luke de Jong, where I feel like we know exactly what we're going to get. So you can be critical of the manager for that, but in this kind of game, I don't know what the youngsters could have done either. I would have liked to see them, and we can be critical of that, but this team as a whole, it's not just Nico and Yusuf and Ricky. The team as a whole is just not talented enough. 5. On to the next. I am recording a podcast in a few hours, so I'm hoping that I can look more at just this individual game. What can we learn just from this match? Because you heard that these 5 headlines, it does feel like a referendum on Barca's season. But I do want to focus on what Barca could possibly learn from this match. Me, if I can't learn anything, I already want to move on to Rayo Vallecano midweek. Because they're a good team this year. Led by Falcao, they have their talisman, they have their goal scorer, they have their guy to finish, and Barcelona could probably use a player like Falcao at this moment. That said, Rayo's going to be a tough task, and that means that if 3 points are won against Rayo Vallecano, no rest on the weekend. You have to take care of business against Deportivo Alavés. So I'm already moving on to the next one, trying to get El Clásico out of my system already. But I did hope that you at least enjoyed or got something cathartic about hearing me complain about how I felt about the match, about the frustrations of where Barca is at the moment. I hope you got something out of this video. If you did, give us a like, subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications. And until next time, as always, win or lose to Real Madrid in El Clásico, Forza Barça.